This is absolutely, hands down, my favorite episode.
Stepping into Eden, yay, brother. You sure you don't like the way to Eden? Amok Time? I think you've heard of this. Second season, and that is the first aired, the 34 production number, the 30th ever aired Amok Time, directed by Joseph Pevney and Theodore Sturgeon, whose names appear at the beginning of the episode big and bold. First the writer, Theodore Sturgeon, and then the director. And the cast, William Shatner as Captain Kirk.
Leonard Nimoy as Mr. Spock.
DeForest Kelley as Dr. McCoy.
George Takei as Sulu.
Walter Koenig as Chekhov.
Michelle Nichols as Uhura.
Majel Barrett as Christine Chapel.
Celia Lovsky as T'Pau.
Arlene Martell as T'Pring.
Lawrence Fontaine, as Stan. So, and here I go. I said it's a special episode. Why? Because it's season 2, episode 1, and it's Bruce's new shirt.
But this is so exciting. This is your favorite. You are doing a Star Trek. You're watching Star Trek to review it and see what the hubbub is, yet you actually have a favorite already.
I have a favorite. I don't know. Well, I do know. I'm going to go over why I love this one so much, because that's what this is all about, right?
Yes.
I love this episode. I was looking at it today, and I was loving it more today than I've loved it before. I go, this is phenomenal. This is a phenomenal, it's a phenomenal writing on it. It's very well blocked or acted out. It's just there's so many things about it that are fantastic.
I agree. This is just unbelievable. And we're not going to give away that we're going to give it high scores or anything like that. It's going to be
I'm glad you captured Kirk on the ladder, because I love the opening of this. You know, he's climbing up this ladder. I don't know what it's called, but the action where he's coming in, it looks to me like he's trying to avoid the crew. He just wants to get from one place to another. He doesn't stop in this whole episode. He's always moving, even when he doesn't need to. You know, Dr. McCoy walks into his office and he jumps up and is going to run out, even though he's filling out paperwork, right? Or, you know, on his tablet, work. So,
and he gets stopped in the hall, and it's like, come on, McCoy, I got things to do.
Yeah, well, I can't wait. You know what it sounds like? And then he's complaining, McCoy's explaining that he thinks Spock's having some problems or some issues. And Kirk is just going, it just sounds like Spock in a contemplative, thing. And he's wanting to get on. And McCoy basically pulls him back. And then, of course, we're stuck by Nurse Chapel because she's bringing him his plummeek soup because she's worried about him. And that's when Spock kind of goes crazy and Kirk goes, oh, this is a little more serious than I thought it was, right? So what we're saying is Spock's having a big problem. McCoy's seeing it. Nurse Chapel is seeing it. But Captain Kirk, he's just too busy. He's got too much going on. He doesn't have time to focus in on what the crew's what's happening with his crew. He's got things to do.
I wanted to say about plummeek soup, a little personal thing for plummeek soup. To me, plummeek soup in my life is like borscht. It's red beet soup, maybe with large dollops of sour cream put on top, but basically beet soup. I grew up with beet soup, and to me, that's what hit the wall. Hey, borscht. It's that's plummeek soup around.
I'll go with that. That sounds really good. I'm gonna have to try that too. I've never had beet soup. Is it good?
Yes, you can be non-Vulcan and put bacon in it, but
okay, cool.
you'll like, and then lots of sour cream and yeah,
delicious.
Yeah.
So anyway, he as much as he loves his plummeek soup because he's having this meltdown, his whole body's he throws his plummeek soup out the door. And I got to tell you, one of the scenes in here, I hope you've got it. It's perfect. But so you've got this Vulcan who's usually under control. Everything's contained. He's erupting like a massive volcano. I love that once Captain Kirk gets triggered in that there's a problem with Mr. Spock, there's a really nice exchange between him and Spock. You could see the caring between the two characters. How well, actually, you could see the caring between Captain Kirk, not so much as Mr. Spock, because he's crazy. And I think that poor Captain Kirk, he escaped a little bit of a knifing, because even Kirk kind of looks behind his back and sees that he's got, whatever it is in his hand, and he's going, oh, geez, man, I think I better handle this. But
Kirk is empathetic. I mean, he goes, I never heard a thing, we're going and changing direction. He does this several times.
I don't think he does that at this particular time. He's trying to figure it out, but he doesn't do it until Dr. McCoy tells him there's this big meltdown happening inside of Spock's body. Then he goes back and he's like, I won't tell anyone. And he doesn't, which is really cool. I really love the way this is written. It's just so well, even when he's reporting and trying to change the course with Starfleet Command, he doesn't tell them why it's happening. He just says, look, we have to stop at Vulcan. So I also love it's written so well. This whole episode is written so beautifully. The words are beautiful. The way they're said are beautiful. They're just so good. And Kirk, when Spock is kind of diverting his question away, like, you've never asked for leave before. Why now? And he goes, well, I've never had leave before. Don't you deserve it? He goes, yeah, but that's not the question. I love the way he goes right back to what it is that Kirk is asking. He's the captain there. He's acting like a captain. He's saying what a captain would. It doesn't matter whether you've had it before or not. That's not the question. What the question is what's happening now with you that you're requesting this? And basically, why are you throwing your plummeek soup? He's going to the heart of the matter. And I just love that he doesn't get diverted by Spock kind of trying to throw, little tangential things at him. Yeah.
Yes, he's trying to get him off task, but no, he is focused. And that's what would happen in real life. And it sounds like the captain.
It sounds like a captain, right? This thing is so well written. It just sounds like a captain. He doesn't let him get away with it. When Kirk goes to exit and the doors open, I love that the plummeek soup is all over the wall. It's still there. It's just so beautiful. Anyway, you have Chekhov with his wig. It's his unbelievable wig. I love that wig. I think if someone has that wig, it's worth a lot of money. I think if anything, Star Trek TOS memorabilia, that's got to be worth a lot of money. So I hope Chekhov has it stuck in his closet somewhere.
Uhura's wig, Chekhov's wig. Chekhov, he came off of a movie, right, with some short hair, and they needed to have their monkeys, and they put this wig on, and oh my gosh, I think the first episode that he wore, that he was acting in, was it Cat's Paw or something like that? But this is the first one we see him in, and it's the worst.
And then, of course, we're always interrupted by Starfleet Command, but they're coming in with an urgent message. Now, why this is an urgent message, I don't know why, but they're gonna move. They got to go to Altair 6 because they're coming into the Federation or something, and they want to do a show of force, et cetera, et cetera. They're starting to gel the crew, right? We're starting to see who is Star Trek TOS. We got Chekhov, we got Sulu, we got Uhura, we've got McCoy, we've got Captain Kirk, and we have Mr. Spock. I think Scotty sans this episode.
The reason I said 6 is because in the book I'm reading, Chekhov Walter Koenig gave a foreword on his involvement and him joining the second season cast, and he mentioned, hey, he was joining the other 6. So we don't see him in this. We don't see Scotty in this episode, but.
So Chekhov's the navigator. The crew's coming together. I put Kirk is still concerned about Mr. Spock. A question for Chekhov. I love that Captain Kirk's laying in his bunk. He's still thinking about Spock. Mr. Spock is going, Jesus, what, you could just see the thoughts going through his head. What can I do? He calls the bridge. He talks to the navigator, says, Chekhov, what would it take us to can we get to Vulcan and still get to where we need to go to Altair 6? And he goes, I don't understand what you're talking about, Captain. And Captain Kirk's, well, how long would it take us, to go out of our way? And he goes, We're already on our way to Vulcan. It was just beautiful. I
Yes.
just
The way Chekhov comes back and says, I don't understand. And then Kirk's like, has to explain the question to him.
yeah.
How long would we be? Well, Spock already told us that. And then he appears on the bridge. Kirk does in the doorway of the turbo lift with his arms out, right? Hands on the hips. Spock, come on.
Yeah, and I love that he pulls him off the bridge to have a private conversation with him, right?
Like,
why did you do that? Instead of in front of everyone questioning him, he takes him onto the turbo lift, starts asking him questions. Why did you do that? When Kirk decides, he says, I need to send Spock to sickbay. There's something going on with him. He's got a problem. So he sends him to sickbay, and Spock shows up and goes, well, I'm here. Now I'm going to leave. McCoy doesn't give in to his shenanigans either. He says, look, I have to answer to the same captain. We got to do this. Yield to the logic. So he talks to him in his language, right? Yield to the logic of the situation. Yes. Let's get you done. So he knows his audience. He knows who Spock is. He's going to go right to there. And what I really love about this whole episode, and you see it throughout the whole episode, the bond between Dr. McCoy, Mr. Spock, and Captain Kirk. There's a serious bond. They don't really do like in the other ones, but they didn't really kind of like mess around like with the double talk and stuff like that, which I really liked. And then Sulu, how he's turned into Chekhov, and he's going first to Vulcan, then Altair 6, and then we're going back to Vulcan. What do you think? Well, I should list plot a course to Vulcan. So they're already kind of thinking ahead. There's something going on here. It's major. Let's just get ready for it. Captain Kirk, he jumps up. As soon as Dr. McCoy walks in, again, he's writing at his desk, and he jumps up and tries to get out of his own cabin, right? He just wants to get out of there. And I'm like, what was he doing that all of a sudden he's so urgent to leave what he's doing and where he's at? And I just think it's really cool. They were putting him on the move all the time. Captain Kirk's just trying to avoid everything in this one, right? And he's just like, this ain't happening. Why? Why must he die? Dr. McCoy said, he's going to die. His body's doing this and it's doing that. It's like a massive adrenaline rush, and he's crushing in on himself. And if we don't get him to Vulcan, because he was thinking that's where the solution was, he's going to die. And why? Why must he die? And then he's kind of mad at McCoy, because McCoy goes, I don't really know. I mean, Dr. McCoy, and he's going, are you a doctor or aren't you? He kind of gives him a little bit of a scolding there.
A couple of things that you mentioned, and I was thinking, yes, such good stuff. Spock goes down to sickbay. Examine me, he says, for all the good it'll do either of us.
Yeah.
Great stuff. And then those two jokers, like you were saying on the bridge. How do you figure it, Chekhov? First we're going to Vulcan, then we're going to Altair. Now we're headed to Vulcan again. And now we're headed, what is it? Then we're headed to Vulcan again. And now we're headed back to Altair. I think I'm going to get space sick.
Right. It just seems like bridge talk to me too, right? Like, yeah, that's probably what they'd be saying on the bridge.
Yes.
This is crazy. He's not on the bridge yet. He's looking at the pictures of T'Pring when she was 7. And the little cute girl, cute little Vulcan girl. And that's when they, I guess, were mind melded together or whatever. When he says she's his wife, I'm like, that's a little far fetched, but you wanted that shock right there, right, of being his wife. But he explains it later. And they did, Theodore Sturgeon did such good writing in this that I'm going to get to it. But my God, he's such a good writer. He's such a good writer. Now, whether or not he wrote this whole script, or whether or not someone took it and piggyback off of it and wrote the way it was written, I don't know, but man, what a great script. So Spock is looking at T'Pring. When Captain Kirk is kind of asking him, and Spock is shaking at 12:37 in the episode. He actually puts the utensil down, the writing utensil down. But when Kirk grabs his hand, it's back in his hand. So it's a little bit of an error, but it's not much. I mean,
wait a minute. Really an error? I thought he stands up and has it behind his back.
That's earlier. I'm talking about when Kirk goes back in to Spock's quarters, and Spock is sitting there, and he's got the writing utensil in his hand, and then he puts it down, but Kirk grabs his hand, and when he grabs his hand, it's in his hand again.
Yes, and the hands that are grabbing him are the wrong hands.
Oh, are they really?
So I believe Shatner puts forth one hand, and then the camera shot is on a different arm. I mean, not that it isn't Shatner. Probably wasn't, because why do that? But it's the between the left and the right. They have a little, not an Etch-a-Sketch.
It wasn't an Etch-a-Sketch. Etch-a-Sketch had it from the inside. This one you wrote on the outside. It was more like a wax coating or something on those things. I know that because my sister was scratching it, and then like scratching my back, and like all this weird, I thought all this really gooey, weird stuff was coming off my back. And I'm like, what are you doing? I was so mad at her when I found out that she was just scratching that thing and just acting like it was stuff on my back. She was messing with me. Okay.
Just like you mess with me.
Exactly. I mean, I learned it from my family. I have no choice.
Oh, God.
Mr. Spock's quarters. I don't know who dressed his quarters, but they really did a funky job. That is like the weirdest dressing of any quarters that I've ever seen. Isn't that just strange in his quarters?
He wants to feel a little bit at home, and maybe his quarters don't look like that normally, but when he freaks out, he goes, I have got to feel like home, and I'm going to put this cauldron of boiling, what's the ice called? Dry ice, and lights that turn on and off. And
so he's talking about to Kirk again, and he's talking, don't you understand how we reproduce? You know, he's like, well, what does he say? He doesn't say reproduce, but how it happens. And Kirk goes, well, I thought it was quite logical. I mean, isn't that great? Just great writing. Well, it's biology. It's kind of like the birds and the bees. And he goes, well, the birds and the bees are not Vulcans, Captain. He's just like, you know, he's still kind of like, he's still got that Vulcan arrogance, I think. It's kind of cool because they really do bring out a big Vulcan arrogance in this episode, don't you think?
Yes. So when he's acting this way and he's not quite himself, do we get to see the true Spock? I
think we do, because if you look at T'Pring and T'Pau, later on, we're going to see some classic lines that are just brilliant. And I think it lends to the culture, the Vulcan culture. And I'm so amazed that Theodore Sturgeon, I mean, he put so much thought into this. I don't know if Theodore Sturgeon came up with the whole thing with all the new words that they use in this episode. You know, all these Vulcan words, these Vulcan terminologies, these different people, T'Pring and T'Pau. I just think, wow, what a wonderful way to write. What great insight. What brilliant forethought too. You know, I just honestly, I'm telling you, you can tell I'm just excited and I love this episode.
I was kind of waffling on deciding how you feel about this.
You're like, I don't know how he feels about this episode. So then we got, and it's funny I mentioned that now, but I think I was getting to it anyway. The Pon Farr means the time of mating, right? So he came up with the Pon Farr, and that means the time of mating. And he does this. Remember, I told you before, it's wonderful when a writer does something or says something and you don't even realize what they're telling you.
Yes.
But they tell it in such a beautiful way. They don't put it in your face. They just kind of let it float past you. And Theodore Sturgeon is such a master at this. So now I'm going to say something, and I probably shouldn't, but I did see a complaint on this episode, like where Mr. Spock says, I'd hoped that I would be spared this. Someone says, no, he's so old in this episode that he would have already been through a few Pon Farrs, and he's just kind of past it. So he's already been through 2 or 3 of these. And I kind of think that they're probably right. What do you think?
I'm thinking you can go with the thought that he is half human, therefore his 7-year cycle is not going to be the norm, or for him. He's going to have some problems. His cycle is going to be out of whack. He is half human. I'm going with if there's any problem with it's not matching up time-wise, or he already went through some and what the heck is he talking about, it's like he's Vulcan, he lives along, he's part human. So it's not going to be the same. Doesn't have to.
I love that you say that. Now, the only other caveat to that I would say is the guy says in one of the movies they refer to that he already had went through upon far. I don't know the movie. I would have to look back on the notes.
When the planet blows up, when they're rescuing young Spock, Spock, the planet reinvents itself. What's the movie after the motion picture?
I don't know.
Then the Wrath of Khan, and then the Search for Spock. So probably the Search for Spock, where we get a new Kirstie Alley, whatever that actress's name was, and he's a boy in one of those scenes. So
is he going through his pon farr in that episode?
I think they were fooling around.
Okay. A little bit of fooling around. Okay. So someone said he had already been through it, but I'll skip it. Yeah.
In 1966, he hadn't been through it yet.
He hadn't been through it in 66. And I love the way that like we had already alluded to or said, where Captain Kirk goes, "What's going on with you?" And he says, "I won't tell anyone, just I'll keep it between us." And then I love the way Captain Kirk says, "I haven't heard a word you said, and we're going to get you to Vulcan." It's a classic great line, right? Yeah, I haven't heard anything. So, but we're going to take care of this for you. I love the way he writes.
Phony. It's just perfect. The delivery. Yeah.
It's spot on. And then plot, of course, back to Vulcan just in case. And Chekhov goes, "It's already plotted." "Oh, well, of course," or something like that. It was great. Spock kind of shows us how to hammer a monitor when someone, Uhura, I guess, is calling him up, and he just pulverizes them. "Leave me alone, damn it." So he has it. It's still there. So he has it, even though he knows he's going to be taken care of. It's still crushing him. He still needs to be taken care of more further than what he is. And it just shows there. I don't know who these set decorators were, but I'm going to take a little bit of issue to him because I got Spock's quarters. I'll take it. He's having a tough time. He decided to redecorate and it looks terrible. But you get into McCoy's office. He's got skulls everywhere. The big beat skull and the really primitive man skull. And I don't even know what the bird skull. I have no idea what else. But it was like, I don't know. It just seemed odd to me that it's more of a paleontologist's office, wouldn't it be?
Might be I think for this episode. I don't know that we actually see that many skulls.
So what was it in Charlie X? I'm sorry, I missed your point. What were you saying about Charlie X?
He said the fingers and toes match the development on Earth. He probably analyzed the skull of this child to see if it's different. He likes bone structure. He likes skulls.
Yeah, okay. Because they're all over his office.
They're all over.
Yeah, okay. When Nurse Chapel goes into his room, right? She's got a crush on him. I think Major Barrett talked about this, right? She didn't think she would have a crush on Spock. Is that right? I don't know if it was this episode or not, but didn't she say she was kind of pining after him and she didn't think a professional woman would do that?
In the Naked Time, were all drugged essentially, right? And
yes.
Was pining for him. And Major Barrett had said, "What a lame character this is."
Yeah. Well, there she is again. She's revisiting him. She goes into him. It's a touching thing. I think we had a touching conversation between McCoy, Captain Kirk, and Mr. Spock. We're having a beautiful conversation between him and her, where she's in his room. She's going to touch him. She decides not to. She's going to leave. He calls her back. He says, "Your face is wet," instead of "you're crying." I mean, it's obvious that she's crying. She's weeping. He says, "Your face is wet." I mean, what a beautiful way to say something.
Yes. And then the end of the conversation, I sure would like some of your soup.
Wonderful.
Much better scene than Naked Time, where they're interacting and she's woo over him.
Exactly. I think it was I put a very touching moment. I think when he said, "Would you make me some of that Flamingo soup?" And she just, you could tell it's just kind of like, and she's a good actress too. I think she just kind of, Yeah, I'd love to. It's such a touching moment. It's just like you could just see someone that's really sick and a spouse trying to take care of his significant or her significant other, trying to do something. They're grumpy at first, and then they kind of relent and they yield to the logic of it all. And that's what I think Spock is doing. It's just like, I can take this. He's starting to thaw to the crew members, and they're caring for him. So it's just great.
Captain, there is a thing that happens to Vulcans at this time, almost an insanity, which you would no doubt find distasteful. Another good scene in the elevator where he asks McCoy to come along.
And then what's Captain Kirk's response to that? Because I thought he had a great response too. He's like, well, it's nothing compared to what we do to you, Spock.
Kirk says, will I? As in, you find it distasteful. He says, will I? You've been most patient with my kinds of madness. Then, would you beam down to the planet's surface and stand by me? There is a brief ceremony. Is it permitted? It is my right. By tradition, the male is accompanied by his closest friends. Thank you, Mr. Spock. And then the door opens and they're walking out, and Spock, oh, by the way, I also request McCoy accompany me.
Yes. Which is so great, right? It's so great. He just knows who his friends are. He knows who he can depend on. I think it's fantastic. McCoy says, I shall be honored, sir. He doesn't mess around. He's not making a joke. He's just saying, I'll be honored. I'll be honored to be there.
How does Vulcan?
How does Vulcan? Oh, they haven't left though. So there's T'Pring, and then they go through their formalities, the greeting of T'Pring and Kirk, and then Major O'Barrett or Nurse Chapel asks, who's that? He goes, well, it's my wife. And so then there's the dun dun dun. She's my wife. And so, and I think they were cut. That's end of what episode or second act?
That's the end of Act 2.
Yeah.
Oh, can I tell you that this is a good episode?
You can.
It's a good episode because over 50% of it takes place on the ship.
Yes. It does. Half of it does take place on the ship.